did transition pictures for French astrologer Michel de Nostradamus, popularly known as Nostradamus. He was around in the 16th century and used to compile an almanac every year, which he would sell. It was based on astrology and intuition and so on, and his research. And it became so popular that he did it every year, and these almanacs were ultimately compiled into a book called The Prophecies, because what he was forecasting went centuries and millennia ahead. And people loved it. They really, really did. So he became quite well known for this. James Randi, of course, the master debunker, thought it was all a bunch of nonsense, as you'd expect. But Nostradamus has had many, many critics over the years who argue that his predictions were vague to begin with, and also that when events that he supposedly predicted happened, they were really, for example, like Princess Diana dying, the rise of Hitler, 9/11 and so on. The quatrains were tweaked and twisted around to make it seem like Nostradamus had got them right. So it was all really a phony, blown-up pile of nonsense. But loads of you asked me to do him. And at first I thought, why? What's the interest in this guy? I don't really want to do the pictures. But as usual, you were right and I was wrong. And these were very, very interesting pictures. When I went into the energy, there was this metaphorical cave that I see virtually every time. But he wasn't around. The place was empty. Nothing was going on. And then after a while, I noticed there was this alcove high up in the wall, and a light was shining out from it. That's where Nostradamus was, sitting in an alcove at a desk, apparently writing. Unperturbed, and this was the remarkable thing, unperturbed by anything that was surrounding him. He just was focused on his work, very dedicated to what he was doing. Although eventually, and reluctantly, he was induced to move on. He scrambles down the side of the cave, and there's another table there with a meal on it. Representative. There was no food or anything, but he sat down and he ate in a metaphorical way and ruminated. But there was no curiosity or wonder or interest in the environment he was in. It was just like, oh yeah, sure, okay, whatever. He just wanted to think about things. His head was full of stuff. Eventually, because you can't sit still forever, he started walking up the tunnel. But even as he walked, his consciousness was not involved in the process of walking. He wanted to go back to his notes. He wanted to complete what he was doing. This whole endeavor was not in any way shocking to him. It was just like, look, I've got things to do. Can this wait? But he continued walking, because he had no choice, really. And across the passageway, across the tunnel, was a screen that he couldn't really see through. And he puts his hand in, and on the other side it feels warm, and on this side it feels cool. Not chilly, but cool. And he steps through, and once he's through, he turns around and puts his hand back again through the screen. And it's cold that side and warm this side. This is comfortable. That is a little inhospitable. And the reason it's cool is because that part of the tunnel has been removed. There is nothing through there now. It's all been taken away. Lest he should think, I'm going to go back. I'm kind of done with this. I want to go back to my studies. And he walks up the rest of the way into the chamber where I normally see the dome, the light, whatever. And the weirdest thing happened at this point. There was something about this environment that was completely different to almost every other chamber I've seen. This had strange roundels on the wall that felt familiar to me. It was almost as if I knew this from somewhere. It had registered in my unconscious, but I couldn't figure out where they came from. why I remembered these things, what they meant. Meanwhile, Nostradamus is in this chamber walking around as though he owns the place. Like a laboratory. Yeah, I know, we go in there, this is what people do, their souls go in there, they rise to a higher realm, blah, blah, blah. Nothing special, nothing interesting to him at all. And that was it, really. Until he suddenly goes, oh. And nothing has changed. Same environment, same light, same everything, but he suddenly goes, oh. I tried to align with his consciousness to see what he might be seeing if I could. And when I looked, the whole place was blurred. He couldn't focus. And this effect, part vertigo, part confusion, or I don't know what it was, but it overwhelmed him really quickly. And he falls to the ground, dizzy. He's lost his bearings. And he goes, oh no, not now, not again. Not again. I thought that was incredibly telling. And he stands up uncertainly and decides that he's going to leave one leg, one foot this side of the dome and put his other foot into the dome. So he's anchored here and doesn't fully go. But as soon as he puts his leg in, it starts to dissipate as individual consciousness merges with universal consciousness. So that by the time he's in, there's nothing to come back. And he went in and he vanished. And that would have been the end of it. Except that at some point later, I figured out what those roundels were. This is going to sound wacky, and I apologize for it, but it's absolutely what happened. When I was a kid, there was a show on the BBC called Doctor Who. It was about a time traveller who can go through space as well, and he has a spaceship, a time machine, and he can go backwards, forwards in time, he can go to different planets and so on. At some point in the history of this show, which is still on, by the way, at some point in the history of this show, his TARDIS, as this time machine is called, had roundels on the wall. He was an alien travelling around the galaxy, travelling through time in this time machine. And I began to think that maybe this chamber had those same roundels on the wall because Spirit, whoever channels these things, knew I would understand their significance. And when Nostradamus said, "Oh, not now, not again," it seemed to suggest that he had not only seen future times to make predictions, he'd visited future times. The way a time-traveling alien could. Now, it's very possible that he was talking about reincarnation. He believed in reincarnation and that we all come back, and he wasn't ready to go. But it could also be that when he made his predictions, he wasn't just figuring stuff out the way James Randi said, or guessing, projecting. He had some capacity, some elevated spiritual astral travel kind of capability that enabled him to somehow, at a spiritual level, visit future times. Because there is no time other than in mortal terms. Once you go over the ethereal divide, there is no time. Maybe he could access that and then go forward or backwards or up or down or whatever in the same way that a time-traveling alien could. And that's why his work has endured. I have no idea. But the presence of those roundels, which was so telling to me, and the fact that he said, oh no, not now, not again, with such despair in his voice, suggested that there was a lot more to Nostradamus than historians and especially the debunkers believed. Maybe there is time travel of sorts, just not in the way that we envisage. And that's what I learned from Nostradamus. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it as always. Share, like, subscribe if you would. That would be enormously helpful. Follow me on Twitter @CashPeters if you like. Otherwise, I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.